We are back with the Cold Star Project. And man, it's truth from the radio booth here about the scaling of businesses, what it really requires, and not the vapid nonsense of biz op sales copy. So I'm here with Pat Lavergne, who I connected with because I was looking through various people that I could connect with, and I saw something really cool in his description. He said, I help SaaS startups scale their MRR by building a sales strategy that closes more leads. And I was like, yes, this is a guy who I want to get to know, and selfishly, because Cold Star helps people who are up here, and if he can help them get from the start to here, maybe that's a good relationship to have, right? So I wanted to connect and hear more about what Pat has done. And he's been gracious enough to come on and talk to us about a role that he had in the SaaS space. So Pat, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
You bet. So let's get right into it. What kind of a business story would you like to share with our audience?
So I will share the last time I actually worked for someone. So it's a SaaS in the HR tech space. I can plug them, I guess, right? So the name is Office Vibe. And basically this SaaS, what they're doing is actually helping teams in organization know in real time, so management of the team knows exactly what's going on with their employees across 26 different metrics. And so it just beats the hell out of the annual survey. So it's like the annual survey 2.0.
Okay, so digging deeper, getting better feedback so that they can figure out what to do with their HR and strategic objectives, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's fully anonymous, so employees really actually love that because they can really say everything that goes through their mind, and management loves it because they get to know exactly what's going on before it's too late and their best employees actually leave the company.
Okay, so you've got an interesting platform, an interesting service. What's the problem?
Right. So I joined this amazing company through some friends being introduced. I'm from Montreal myself, but I was already living in Toronto, and these guys are in Montreal, and it's a bootstrap company. So they're doing their own show. It's a bunch of guys who don't have a sales background, so they're all engineers and devs. And at that point, when they approached me, the platform has approximately 1,000 customers. I would say small organizations pocketed between the East Coast and the West Coast in the States and in Canada. And they want to scale. They want to really like put their feet on the gas pedal and accelerate things. And they don't have a sales operation at that point. And so they asked me if I would like to actually join in, and it seemed too good to be true. And that was actually my first stint in the tech space, and so that's something I really wanted to do. So I moved back to Montreal to help these guys out. So that's how it started.
Okay. What kind of indicators were there other than, hey, we're not making sales, that there's a problem?
Right. So they were doing a lot of great stuff with marketing, actually. So sales, not so much, but they had this, they were basically acquiring their clients through creating a lot of content. So they had this blog going on that was really popular, and they by the time I showed up, they had like a newsletter that had approximately 500,000 people, MQLs for the most, so marketing qualified leads, that were actually interacting with the newsletter, but they weren't doing anything with that stuff. And if you were to go on their website at the time, they wouldn't even advertise for a demo or pricing or just let's get in touch. There was none of that, basically. So it was mostly their strategy when I joined was they had a 2-week free trial, so for people to just sign up by themselves. It was totally self-serve, so they couldn't talk to anyone. They would sign up, and then a portion of the people who signed up would, after 2 weeks, would purchase the platform.
Right. So not much in the way of calls to action, and then a sales process where leads are in with a free demo, and then we just sort of hope that they convert.
Exactly.
Paying customers.
Yeah.
And accidentally, a certain portion does. I see. Is anybody looking at this and going, hey, could we improve on that? Or are they just kind of throwing up their hands and going, well, that's it. That is the way it is?
Well, the place was filled with really intelligent people, but
Hmm.
like overly stretched people as well. Like the
Okay.
founders were wearing like multiple hats. When I joined, there was 16 people in that company. It was a roughly 2 million, ARR
Hmm.
business, and they knew they could do so much more, but at the same time, they didn't really have the sales expertise. So they weren't too keen on like experimenting too much on their own. So that's when they realized that they needed some help. But yeah, so when I joined, like for me, that was paradise being someone from sales, because I had like a lot of resources to work with, a lot of leads, a lot of untapped potential, and this amazing platform. And actually, one of the reasons why I joined them is that I was actually a client. I forgot to say this. I was a
Hmm.
customer of their platform without even knowing that I'd eventually work there. And I knew the value behind that platform myself.
Okay. That that's great when you don't have to worry about fulfillment, right? That is taken care of. Oh, and I've got this pool of leads that I can learn quickly from by interacting with, right? And
Yeah.
we see this a lot. I'm actually going to record a solo episode about this. In the SaaS world, that concentration of, oh, you've got to book demos as the only sales and marketing process is very dangerous, right? You go down that road, and the danger that you can get into is that the founders have created this solution that it turns out nobody really wants, right? And so they book demos with people who really aren't that interested. There's no buy-in, and all the wonderful features that have been come up with, nobody cares. And we see this a lot. So tell me about what you did as far as implementing a solution. How did you go about putting into some structure here about how am I going to help them scale this business from 2 million ARR?
Right. So I guess the first thing I did when I joined, I think, as pretty much anyone would do, is I just took the time to assess and understand the platform, but also understand the processes. And day one, I realized we had two people in the company, and what they were doing, they were like with the marketing team. So they were walking around in Montreal, and they would try to get sit downs with potential clients, and then just show them that there was a free trial, and their job was to put people on the free trial even if they weren't qualified at all.
Hmm.
And they had like a quota to fill for free trial. So trying understanding these things. Profiling our clients. So like I was interested in knowing what are the clients that are actually signing with us, why, and why other profiles aren't signing with us, and really trying to make sense of, is it because of the platform is not catering to their needs, or it's because we're simply not good with our messaging enough to convey that value that we already have. So it's, I pretty much took a month to just assess everything and really understand what was going on.
Okay. It's not a perverse incentive, the get the signups, right? You've got this quota of signups, but it's not a very good one for getting qualified leads, as you pointed out. And so by finding out, okay, what's our typical client profile? What does that look like? Who could we filter leads for to find people who have a greater chance of signing up here? And what kind of noises are they making that tell us, hey, we could repeat these noises again. We could broadcast them out, right? And say, look, if you're listening, if this kind of noise makes sense to you, these are usually called pain points, by the way, for those who are watching. Pat knows this, right? But I'm repeating it for those who are watching who may not know that. You're going to draw in people from that target market who fit that profile and are interested. And that's the kind of person that you want to get to have a look at a demo or sign up for a free trial. So tell us about a little bit more about the process and the results.
Right. So what I discovered at that point is the vast majority of our clients were all at the same profile. So it was either a small startup in tech that was like an innovator, and they were looking for ways to retain their talent, because a small startup, especially in places like on the West Coast in the States or on the East Coast, they're fighting for talent. They want to make sure they retain their talent, make sure they're well taken care of. And so they would proactively look for solutions such as
Mm.
Office Vibe. And the other factor that made them turn into clients is because it was a small team, the cost was pretty low, because the business model was price per seating. So you pay
Okay.
a certain amount of money per employee. So we had a bunch of these clients that were smaller clients. but we wanted to go into more, traditional industries and larger organizations as well. We wanted to raise our average pricing, the money we're getting in for each customer, basically. So what we did is actually we started researching then, okay, so how do we get to these people? And we started just, doing a lot of market research and getting to talk to these potential clients. And there was another subset of clients that we had, which were large organizations, but we just had one team within the larger organization. So for example, think of a bank, but like just the innovation, team from the bank, which could have been like 20 employees, for example. So again, they kind of shared the traits of that tech startup, but in a much larger setting. And so through these people, we were able to kind of get into conversation with, like a division of a bank or larger organizations like that, and just assess the gap between what we were offering and how we were talking about it and what they were hoping for. Because for most of them, they were pretty much stuck on the annual survey, and it wasn't, basically doing the job. So then it was for us to understand. So once we understood, that our platform wasn't perfect for all of the profiles out there, but for organizations, I'd say 100 employees to maybe 500 employees, like the platform was perfect, yet we didn't have a single client. Then we got down and started working with marketing to just adjust a little bit the copy, adjust the website, and prepare to start driving, those sales qualified leads down the funnel, and then for the new sales team to basically nurture these SQLs, qualify them, enable them, and bring them all the way to the close.
Okay, you mentioned the sales team just now. So did you have people working for you that ended up working for you? Okay.
Yeah, so I'd say once we were done assessing everything, I took these two guys I was telling you about that were roaming Montreal, and I treated them to a really good dinner, because like the news would be tough, because I basically told them, I know this is kind of fun what we're doing right now, but we need to scale, and we need to be more in volume at this point, and so we're going to have to transition these roles into inside sales. So we'll need to be on the phone, and we'll be much more efficient that way. And the guys that were really cool, they understood. And so basically that's how we started the sales team, with these two people to start setting up the sales funnel, and then go on with the sales activities.
Okay. So by that point, you had figured out what that ideal client profile looked like, what the pain points look like, what the copy should look like, how to filter. What else did you do to get a process in place for those salespeople so that you could see consistent results and maybe measure and manage when they were off track?
Right. So internally, we just landed together on, and this is like highly iterative. So we went through a lot of iteration, but we built our own, I guess you can call, own playbook. And in there, together as a team, we came up with the sales process. So thinking about the stranger to customer journey, or the buyer's journey, just trying to understand, putting ourselves in the shoes of our buyer and understanding what kind of journey they were going through. From the moment they're at the awareness stage all the way to the consideration and then the decision-making stage, and how we could basically equip them or accelerate them through that funnel at each of the stages. And once we understood what they needed, then we just adjusted our own stuff on our end to kind of match that. So for us, it looked like we would qualify the leads. So at first we did it manually. So we would have like a shorter phone conversations with the leads that were raising their hand, and they seemed legit enough. So a shorter intro call where we were basically qualifying, asking our questions to see if we want to demo them, because to your point, you don't want to demo everyone because you'll just burn yourself. Right. And then with what we learned, when we hopped on a demo, then we really trained ourselves to give a demo and not just pitch the features of our tool, because by that point we had 42 different features. So we knew that probably like in 2016 back then, people, they don't want you to pitch them the features. They're on your website. They don't really care about that. What they want is they want you to understand what their problem is and where they're going and how you'll bring them there. So the demo, we got really good at personalizing ourselves to the context of our client. So we did that. And then once we were good at doing demos, then it was like, okay, how do we go from the demo, from having that champion or even that buyer like excited about the platform, but how do we go from there to actually purchasing? And then we call that the enabling phase. And this is where we really made sure that we followed up the right way, and providing them with all the information they needed on top of basically what we've given them so far.
Okay. And that's really important. You know, the bit about the, hey, we have 40 plus different features and going through all of them is going to be ridiculous. And I go back to experience I had as business development manager of an IT firm back 10 years ago in Vancouver. Before I left, we had one product that was a firewall intelligent content filter, and it did like 4 things, right? And what we would find is people would buy it for one of those 4 things, and they did not care about the 3 other things. You could talk about them and say how great they were, and they wouldn't care. And they'd buy for that one thing. The thing that was really amusing to me was 6 months later, they'd come back and go, hey, we love this product. What about, and they'd ask about one of the other 3 things. And I'd have the great joy of telling them you've already got it. You just need to turn this function on, right?
Right.
So I can imagine a lot of that happening there. So
Absolutely.
people do not buy your SaaS or your product or service for the 1,000 things that it does.
I have a quote: people, they don't buy a feature, they buy a future. So that's what we used to go by.
Okay. So the results of all this dandying up that you've done and process cleaning up in that are, what happened?
Yeah, so when we started, we really sucked at it, to be honest. Like right now, like it sounds like easy enough, but we weren't qualifying properly. We were pitching the wrong benefits, so we thought we figured it out. We didn't. So I guess what I'm saying here is we had to, just humble ourselves a little bit and really always get back to. It was hard for us at sales because we were working for an amazing company and we were like bringing out new features and they were so exciting, and so we'd get excited internally about our features, but then we kind of forgot a little bit about our clients and about their needs, and then we'd go back to trying to pitch them like the new features and like shove it down their throat when that's not what they needed. So it took, like, that was quite a journey, I'd say, in that first 6 months that we had a sales team, to really nail down the process and even ramp ourselves up because we all had to learn as well. And one thing we had going for us is we were never short of leads. Actually, we had too many. So at first, it was this balancing, like, when do we hire someone like a third person in the team versus when do we maybe like filter more aggressively the MQLs that are coming in. So we were always trying to balance these 2 aspects. We didn't want to burn any money and hiring people who wouldn't do nothing, but at the same time, we wanted to scale and we knew we had to grow at the same,
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are interesting decision points. Let's dig into that. I'll hop back to something you were just saying, but this idea that, okay, we've developed new features and we think they're so great, but the target market doesn't really care, it turns out. And there's that feedback loop, and that takes a while, and you kind of got to be willing to take the punch, right? This is very common. And I've been copywriting for over 20 years. And every time I've sat down to write a sales page or something, the stuff that I thought was important invariably did not matter or didn't matter as much as what that target market wanted. And it's almost embarrassing, right? When you're this supposed really good, competent person at this task, whether it's sales or copywriting, and you're going to get it wrong the first time, right? That is humbling, as you say. And I want to express that to our listeners, because it's like you were saying earlier, everybody thinks this is going to be easy. And no, it's not. You're going to get it wrong. You're going to get punched in the face. You're going to realize, oh man, we were so off target. And some companies are not prepared to be wrong, or not prepared to take the punch for a little while so that they can iterate to something that does begin to work. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Share a little bit about your experience or your thoughts about that iterative process a little more.
Yeah, sure. So between day one and the 6 month mark, I think we iterated like 17 version. I remember distinctly like V17 of our playbook. And amongst the things that we were iterating on, for example, we had like the buyer persona, right? So the people we were talking about, and we got better at understanding them. And very quickly, we realized that we were talking to quite a few different people, like in those organizations. So there was like the head of HR. If you look at the large organization, there was like a head of HR, but there's also like the VP of, finance that had his say, or the CEO of a smaller organization. And we realized that we might get our messaging right, but just for one type of persona. And we had to redo the work for all the different types, because you don't talk, like a VP of finance doesn't care about the same things as the head of HR very often. So we had to learn to understand like these different personas. So that's one thing that I can say about the way we were iterating. And then it was like, you had a previous question about how we were keeping ourselves accountable, like metric wise. So, what were the KPIs? One thing, so I think most organizations, at least they will compare themselves like versus themselves historically. So they'll be, okay, last month we were there, so now let's aim for 20% more or whatever. But and we're fortunate because in sales, like it's a developed enough function now that you have a lot of information out there on the web. So by that time, I'm going to plug another organization. I joined the American Association of Inside Sales Professional. And that's a really good association. Like if you the viewers, if you have like inside sales within you, so there's a lot of like white paper. It's an amazing community, lots of white paper, lots of studies that are meta-analysis and all that stuff. And through there was the Bridge group, that releases once a year a meta-analysis of all the SaaS companies out there. I think they survey like 400 or 500, and they break it down, and it allowed like studies like that one allowed us to have a benchmark which we can compare versus other SaaS out there selling something similar and have a similar ticket. So we knew what to go for, and so this gave us a lot of confidence when we weren't quite. And when you do it just by yourself, you think you're doing good, and then you see what others are doing out there, and like what the gap is, and then you can just kind of like reverse engineer from that number and figure a way to make it work. And at first, like we didn't have any tech stack, so we weren't actually leveraging anything, and so we were mostly manual. But by the end, like we had our process down, and we were getting closer to this, and this is where we started moving the needle in the right direction and doing better.
So important to know your numbers, and not just like yours in isolation, but in relation to industry standards. There's a video I made a couple years ago based on some information, a graph I came across about golf, that professional golfers miss 10-foot putts 45% of the time. And these guys eat, drink, sleep, breathe golf. Like they're superstars at it. They're on TV doing it, and they're missing almost half the time at 10 feet. And so how do you think you're going to do? And so if you are missing a lot, I remember this made me feel a hell of a lot better about my short game. It's okay. So having that exterior standard to base against is
Absolutely
really useful for morale purposes.
Absolutely, you're right. I love the golf analogy. There's also the baseball analogy. The best sluggers out there, they strike out. They miss 6 times out of 10 or 7 times out of 10, and they still go to Hall of Fame. So back to your analogy. So yeah, that's a really good one.
Right. So important to know your numbers. Okay, let's move in to what you're doing now, and then we can wrap up. Tell our listeners who's the right kind of person to be talking to you.
Right. So I love my time at Office Vibe. We ramped up, to finish the story with them. We like in less than a year, we went from the 2 million AR to 9 million AR with a pretty much of a skeleton crew for sales. And then it went to a game of like, let's just optimize and let's just manage. And this is the point where I'm like, actually, I think I'm more of a builder. And so I want to go back to this really cool space where you start at 0 and you just have to go to 1 or 2 and you got to go to 9 million. So actually what I did is now I'm doing this exact same thing, but I'm doing it on a consultancy basis. And so I help SaaS, not just in HR, but SaaS, but that are all at the same spot. So SaaS that just raised seed money, and now they have to basically validate by getting some clients, but they have no idea how to go about it with their sales. And so I help them basically just structure everything sales wise. So either come up with a sales strategy or set up the sales funnel, or come up with, like the research behind their buyers. So help them understand what their buyers need, translating their great features into a future for their buyer, and just getting it off the ground for them, and reducing the risk that they'll be spinning their wheels for months, if not years, and nothing's going to happen. So that's what I love doing. I take a few clients at a time, and I do it completely remotely, so I can work from Portugal in the winter, which was, my dream, part of it anyways. So yeah, so that's what I do.
Okay. Best way for people to get in touch with you?
Oh my God. So anyway, LinkedIn, I guess we'll put the links, LinkedIn, Facebook, Skype, you can find me. If you want to chat, you can chat. Otherwise, my website, patlavergne.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today and sharing this picture of what it really takes to go from doing okay to doing really well in SaaS.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a great chat.
You bet.